Hi, I'm Brent Haseker, online marketing consultant with NetSource Technologies.
I'm Melissa Thrush, the Director of Operations.
I'm Laura Weaver, online marketing consultant for NetSource Media.
And today we're going to talk to you about ADA compliance and why it is important for your business website, both from a legal standpoint and also from a customer service standpoint. So, since that's the focus of our video, what is ADA compliance?
So ADA means Americans with Disabilities Act, and it actually started as something that businesses physically had to do to make sure that people with disabilities could get into their storefronts and things like that, have the same access as a person without disabilities. So last year, I believe it was the Department of Justice who said that ADA regulations actually do apply to websites.
Right.
Are there different levels of ADA compliance?
Yep. Brent, did you want to take that one?
Sure. It's a little confusing because the courts haven't fully have set a legal standard for what ADA compliance is for websites. So you've got stuff like WCAG 2.0, 2.1, then you've got A, AA, AAA levels of compliance, and you've got, section 508 or 503, I can't remember off the top of my head.
There's 5 or 6 different
Yeah, there's tons of different levels of compliance, and so it just kind of muddies the water, makes it confusing, and so it just makes it really complicated, so it can be something that website users, if they want to do ADA compliance, they're like, well, where the heck do we even start on this? Right. And that's kind of one of the things we wanted to mention is that there has to be an easier way to do this.
Sure. So some of the reasons that it's so complex is because even though there's not an official standard, there are guidelines out there. So the most popular one is WCAG that Brent had mentioned already. And within that, there are 4 different sections. And within those 4 sections, there are subsections underneath that. So it's really complex. So for example, I wanted to kind of give you an idea. The first section is called perceivable, which just means how the information on the website is actually presented to the person using the site. Sounds really simple, right? I'm presenting information, I'm putting text and pictures and videos, and they can see it. Within that first section of WCAG compliance, and this is level 2.0 that we're talking about here, there are 4 sections, and then below those 4 sections, within perceivable, there are 22 subsections. So you can understand how it's overwhelming for business owners and website professionals to kind of manage that.
Right.
Does that have any impact of how the website looks in order to achieve ADA compliance? Is it a completely restarting from scratch? I've got to take down what I have and start over type of situation? Well,
it depends really. So there are tools out there that make the answer no. So we'll talk about one of those a little bit later in the video, I think, when we get to this service that we're offering. But a lot of the things have to do with contrast. So can somebody with a visual impairment, whether they're blind or colorblind, or if they have cognitive disabilities or even epilepsy, how the website displays to them. So for example, if you've got a lot of moving elements, somebody with epilepsy could really have a big problem. So it's important to take into consideration those people in the population who need to be able to use websites just like everybody else. So that's the goal of ADA compliance for the users, is to be able to access the website and be able to use it just like anybody without a disability does. And then the other goal for ADA compliance for the business owner, which is who we're talking to today really, has to do with lawsuits that are out there. I know, Brent, you did some research on how the lawsuits have kind of expanded. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
It really, as of a few years ago, it was mostly government websites that had to worry most about ADA compliance, but really it's starting to become more prevalent for any website at all to get sued if they're not ADA compliant. Between 2017 and 2018, lawsuits for ADA compliance on websites actually tripled. And that was between 2017 and 18. Now 2019, don't have all the full data yet, but it's looking like that trend is continuing. Yeah, it's continuing. And so, and most of the lawsuits are coming out of Florida and New York, actually, by a huge margin. So it's definitely something that not just governments are getting hit with ADA compliance now, but also small businesses, because the lawsuits are seeing small businesses as an easy target because they don't have the big funds and whatnot to be able to fight the lawsuit. So usually it can be a small settlement, might not be a lot, but it's usually, quick. The attorneys and whatnot see it as quick money.
Sure.
Also, the big businesses are getting hit because they've got the big dollars, and so they can settle for larger amounts. So, from a legal standpoint, it can definitely be very costly for a business.
Right. We just had a small business out of Texas, I believe, contact us just a couple of weeks ago. They had gotten a letter from an attorney. And I did a little bit of research, and about 95% of these cases settle out of court. But the costs range between 20 grand and 150 grand.
Wow.
So you can imagine the impact that would have on any business, much less a small one, like this particular customer was.
Absolutely.
Or is.
Seeing that this is becoming more of an issue, why aren't we seeing more ADA compliance on websites out there? Why is this just now starting to be a trend that we're seeing and hearing about online, really?
It's a little bit overwhelming and scary even for a website developer to kind of take charge of. There are so many different regulations like we talked about earlier. It's not just the way that information is presented visibly on the screen, but how things in the background work, if alt tags are being used. There's a lot of, which isn't hard, right? But there's a whole bunch of that.
Right.
You have to make sure that if a person uses a screen reader and they come to the site, that the screen reader can read and automatically know everything that's going on the site and be usable. So I think it's just, there's always a lag too. So because the DOJ affirmed it had to be done by November of last year, there's always going to be a lag before people can kind of catch up and get their ducks in a row. But thankfully we are ready.
Yeah, and there's not that legal standard of what the compliance actually is. So the courts are still trying to figure out what the actual standard is. So WCAG 2.0 AA is kind of the main guide that most websites go by. And so the main thing that the courts are looking for is that you're doing some sort of compliance and that you're making the website accessible for the majority of the people out there.
Right.
Great. How easy is it, obviously because it's ever changing, the rules are changing, the specs are changing. If I tried to go out and I achieve this today, what happens when it changes tomorrow?
Sure. So if you're just manually trying to make your website ADA compliant, it's a constant manual change. So every time you add something new, you have to make sure you're following all of those guidelines.
Wow.
Yeah.
So new functionality would even be bigger than just adding a new page of content of text or whatnot on your website. So one of the really awesome things about this new ADA compliance tool that we are releasing is that it scans the website every 24 hours. So we install this tool on your website. It takes 48 hours to fully scan. It uses artificial intelligence to do the full scan. It reads every single bit of information on the site, makes sure that it makes the adjustments needed to fall within ADA compliance, and then every 24 hours, it's rescanning for changes.
Cool.
So, and also as things change within so WCAG, if a new thing comes along, this tool is automatically going through. There's constant development being done on it to make sure we're staying within the guidelines.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And so like when, in this tool, which you'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, actually do a little demonstration of it too. What's great about it is that if you were to do it from a manual process, it can really be a lot of hours of development work. Right. And also there's typically, you might go through an audit process where a compliance audit from a company that does compliance. They'll charge you thousands of dollars in some cases in order to do an audit on your website, and they don't even fix it. They just do the audit. Tell you. Say, here you go. Here's what you got to fix on your website. Give us our money. So,
and usually how it works too is they'll sell you a package of 2 audits. So they'll give you an audit, they'll tell you to fix it, and then they'll do another audit, which is again. We had one estimate for $20,000 just for the first and second audit. So.
Yeah, and they don't even fix it.
They don't fix it.
Yeah.
And this tool does.
Yes.
So do you want to talk about this tool? Actually,
Sure.
Show us kind of example of how it works, and because I think one of the concerns people might have is this going to mess up how my website actually looks and some different things like that.
Sure. Before I show the tool, I want to drive home the point that it works differently depending on the usage of the person.
Okay.
So if I'm a person with disabilities and I already have some help for me, so I've got some technical adjustments that I already make, whether it's a screen reader or something else, there's code in the tool that alerts that system and says, okay, bring it up and it's ready to use. So the way that we're going to see it here is different than somebody who's using a screen reader or something else, another assistive device would see it. Okay, so I'm just going to get us set up here, and we have installed this tool on a National RV Classified website. So if you look down here in the bottom right-hand corner, there's just this little handicap icon. And so a person without one of those assistive technologies can manually go in and use this tool as well. So there are different sections in here. So you scroll down, you can see there's virtual keyboard, accessible mode, and then stop animations. This kind of goes back to what I was referencing earlier about folks with epilepsy, being able to stop any sort of movements that might trigger a seizure for them. Content adjustments like font size, emphasizing titles and links, magnifying text, alignments, different kind of scaling and letter spacing, different alignments. It's really fascinating because there are so many different ways that people with cognitive disabilities or other challenges need to adjust content in order to be able to consume it well. So this tool really does kind of cover everything, I think. So they also have color and display adjustments. So again, this, if you have low vision, blurry vision, or color blindness, this section is really important. You can adjust different colors and contrasts. Navigation adjustments. So how do you want to get about the website? Do you want to hide images and mute sounds? You have all of this different technology in here. You can even change the color of your cursor for contrast reasons. So let's just go ahead and kind of adjust some of these settings in here. So I'm going to adjust the font. We'll do 20% and choose emphasize titles. Oops, almost there. And then let's go ahead and do some high contrast. So it's you can see in the background it's making the changes as I click on things. And I can also let you high saturation. So pay attention to the background instead of where my mouse is. You can see it changes contrast. So then I'm going to scroll up here and I'm just going to close out of this tool. And then as we look at the website, you can see it's changed its look just a bit. So this is the emphasizing titles. You saw the contrast and saturation adjustments as I was making the changes there. So that's just one example of how the manual interface works. I can go back in here and reset the settings, and then it will just take everything back to normal. This is also a great way to see that it doesn't actually affect the website itself at all. So for individuals without disabilities, they'll continue using the site just as if the tool wasn't even in use.
Is it pretty seamless on mobile devices as well?
It is.
Okay.
So you can actually, by default, it does show up on mobile. If for some reason you wanted to, you could turn it off there. But you have the ability to change placement, the shape, the size, the color. So it's we try to customize it. But we also, another good point is that a lot of the times we're leaving it as this blue color because I think in people's minds it does associate with handicap accessibility. So.
Right, absolutely.
And that's great that that the user gets to customize it for their needs. It's not where in typical ADA compliance where you're trying to make one website that serves everyone, but you're making this adjustment here, but oh no, now it affects this other user over here. This is just, hey, here's the website. And if you got certain needs and how you need the website to look, you can customize it as you need it, and so it is able to serve everyone.
Right, a really unique experience for every individual, so it really does open it up to more customers for your business.
And since that lays over top of the website, then it's not something that the web designer has to go in there and make a bunch of changes. It's just a tool that plugs in and does all the work for you, basically.
Yep.
That's great. And so if you want to know more about this tool, give us a call today at 1-800-709-3240. Find out how you can get a free trial of this tool and use it on your website, see how it works for you. Or just to talk to us about more information about this tool or about ADA compliance in general. We'd love to speak with you, and we thank you for watching.